Welcome to the podcast of School Beyond Limitations. In this podcast, you will learn how to guide your child through their school life with the intention to help them find their unique essence that will allow your daughter, your son to live a fulfilled and meaningful life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 9th podcast of this episode. And today we have once again myself and Martina here with us. Today we'll be talking about the art of learning. Martina, would you like to start?
The art of learning for me is something which is embedded in us in the first place because it's the clarity that we are born as curious human beings, as explorers. If we look at babies, at toddlers, then they just want to explore the world around them. And the art of learning means that I keep, in my view, this kind of curiosity always on the surface. I allow this curiosity to guide me through life by having and by keeping a beginner's mind. And a beginner's mind is somehow an open mind that says, oh, interesting, let's see what else is out there, right? And if I have this beginner's mind, then I approach life in a different way, because then I approach life in a way that, of course, looks for kind of certainty somehow, because this is a human need of all of us, that we need to find the balance between certainty and variety, right? So we are looking for variety, for change. That's part of who we are. But at the same time, we need to feel safe in a space. And in order to feel safe, I also have to have some kind of routines that are part of who I am. And so I build up routines that help me to be kind of grounded and rooted within myself. But at the same time, there is a part of myself that says, I want to change, I want to see, I want to explore more, I want to see what's out there. And I think one key aspect for that is really, and that's what I would ask, art of learning, or even, just rather than art of learning, the joy for learning, the joy of learning, If I keep a beginner's mind and I'm open, then I will never stop, because there's always something out there. And this is what, in my view, we have innately within us, but that gets sometimes really cut off because we are exposed also in schools to do always the same things, maybe at a time where I'm not even interested in something. That's why I think education really needs to look into that, so that we keep, and parents as well, because if parents, they kill the stream of questions in their children, and they say, no, I don't have time, I don't want to do this now, because it's, of course, demanding. If there is a child constantly asking for something new, that can be demanding if I don't have time. But even if I don't have time, I think as a parent you can say, oh, that's an interesting question, let me finish this, and then I will answer your question if it's really not possible in the moment. But I need to give this child, this student in school, this idea, oh, I hear you, I understand that you are interested in vegetation in Bangladesh, for instance. Let's go into that afterwards when there is a time, or you go into it already. If you want to find out why don't you do it by yourself in the meantime, and then I will come to you and we will discuss this. It's a different kind of energy flow then taking place. And then, then we stay in this beginner's mind and in this joy for learning, joy of learning. And that's something very magical. And then we feel basically that this is part of being a human being, and that should be nurtured constantly. This is my view. What do you think, Nayeef?
You're right on spot. I think to be a learner, we have to have the space, a safe space created around us. I always keep mentioning, a person's curiosity is always there. It just needs the very word you said, it just needs a little bit of nurture and then a little bit of motivation to get them out, to see what's really out there in this world, and to feel like they're not restricted to knowledge, they're not restricted to knowing things or doing things, because that's how we get into the whole process of life, you know, learning and doing, is back in the days or even today, unfortunately, somewhere you would see, there's a lot of knowledge being provided and being directed and dictated, but those are of no use because one don't feel like they are necessarily interested to actually get them inside of them the knowledge and then do something with it, because they're not interested, perhaps because the whole the true idea wasn't provided, or the culture wasn't created well enough to feel or to make them feel interested, because you know to be interested into something you'll also have to have the understanding of what it truly means to them, which is not provided, unfortunately, in many places. So I think when we talk about the art of learning, we have to understand where it should come from and how it can be well nurtured to, for the learning to become an actual art. And I think it starts from home. Parenting is a big part of it, not, as you said, I mean, it's a very sensitive topic because, of course, there are always work, there are always, lots to do. But I think to burn down the spark of a child's curiosity through saying, we don't have time, or maybe through saying, this isn't something we should be worrying about, I think really kills that person's creative mind for, in a much longer term. And then we regret, how and why do we turn out to be the way we are when once we are like, much older, because the spark has already been killed and damaged when we were young, So when we take care of our child, of course, every parents love their children and they want their children to be the best. But these are the little cautiousness that needs to be embedded into the parent's mind. Always go back to your childhood, what you expected when you were a child, and perhaps there were things you have gotten and there were things you regret not having, but we should be always trying to give to our children what we have once desired for, because that can actually bring a child's best curious mind and creative mind to this world to feel like, I'm being seen, I'm being guided, I'm being helped and supported. And SBL is just exactly that. It allows the safe space for the students to feel like, anything, any thought that they have, anything they want to do, they're always being supported. Of course, there are criticisms, but those are good critics to make them understand and give them the true sense of what they're actually doing, and then why they're doing it. So the questions are come along the way as you are discussing with your peers or your teachers, and that really gets you going in life. So
And you just mentioned something about parenting also, and this applies to parenting as much as to teaching and being an educator. I think it's important to involve your children, your students, in the topic, and in what you self are doing, right? I mean, as a parent, if I'm, for instance, painting out the walls of a room, I involve my child in doing that. If I'm interested in, I don't know, hiking, I love hiking, for instance, I bring my child on, hiking tours, and I can't expect my child at the age of 4. I remember when I started hiking with my son, he was only 4, or 4.5. And of course, and I wanted to go up to the peak of a mountain. Of course, you can't expect this child to go through from the beginning up to the top of the mountain and without any breaks. But then you start telling stories, you start showing the child around, you stop once in a while, you say, let's have another 10 minutes, and then we have a banana together. It's just this shared experience. And then slowly but surely the child gets into the habit of doing it and also establishes and grows, basically, and builds this enthusiasm for this. I just was also, very, very fascinating about the children of a family where the children are involved in whatever the family is doing, whether this is carpenting, whether this is, painting, whether this is cooking. Sorry, now I'm in the Italian home and they are still preparing lots of things, so you may hear some noise in the background, but it's this, right? I involve because I think there is this tendency nowadays, not everywhere, but very often, that I see, and I find that very sad. I see parents giving their children, if they want to be, they go out for dinner, for instance. They go out for dinner and they put the cell phone into their children's hands while, because they want to have a conversation among themselves, and the children are in front of their cell phones. They are not involved in the conversation, in the community of that table. And that creates separation. And first and foremost, once, I pass this on, if I see, it makes me feel very sad to see children at the age of 2, 3, going around with their cell phones in their hands. I mean, the cell phones is such a distraction. And again, there is so much beauty and positives about, technology. But if I bring that into a child's hands, there are many studies out there that say don't even give them a cell phone until the age of 14. There are other studies that say 12 and 10, but that's then, I think we as parents, we need to be very, very, very careful about that. When my own child was younger, then of course, who is a grown up now, at the time the cell phone started to take off, and all his friends had cell phones, but we didn't give him a cell phone because we thought this is not necessary. And since we were not in favor, he didn't even ask. And I don't want to say that today there is no peer pressure, but I think we are now also all understanding that having, the exposure to digital devices, that will kill actually the art of learning and for learning, because it's a distraction. It's actually separating you from this beginner's mind. It's actually more, especially those social media channels, that constantly, expose you to lots of little reels and you can't stop watching. And then I was in a class, I don't know whether I mentioned that already once. I was in a class recently and we checked on our screen time and we calculated how much lifetime we spent if we were to continue with this screen time. And they were shocked. They were saying, no, this is not what I want, because I don't want to stay on the screen constantly. I want to also experience other activities. Yeah. And that's the joy for learning, because when I'm constantly online and just consuming, that kills the beginner's mind. That kills it, because then I become detached from myself. Once I'm detached from myself, then, I don't even know anymore what my interests are. I don't know anymore what I can do with my life. And that's where we have such a huge responsibility in the first place as parents, I think, and of course also in schools. And this is our duty to keep this love for learning, to lit that love for learning more and more, because it's innate and we can't lose it. And this is what we are doing, as you said, Nayeef, at SPL, or constantly trying to do. It's not always, we are not successful always immediately, but we need to pursue it together with the parents, and then we can achieve a lot. And I just think of one of our students who was very, very addicted to staying online and gaming and all of that, and just recently made this shift and said, no, I realize now I don't want that to happen anymore. I don't want technology to run my life. I want technology to support me in my learning, but not the other way around.
Yeah, I think you're very right about everything that you said, and I'm just gonna go back to the whole parenting thing once again. I mean, detachment from ourselves is not like a sudden thing that happens. It's a habit of lifetime. You know, when we were young, perhaps in our family, we always, try to keep our children away from the family topics or family discussions because we think, it's probably too much for them, or perhaps it's not adult topics that they should be getting involved with. But I think this develops them over time, and they feel they're more involved in the family, and they're more concerned about the family, about their family once they're growing up and maturing and developing, because we have constantly kept them within the family discussions, within the family, moments, and then this is a shared experience, as you said. And I think another great thing that SBL classroom culture has is the blending. Age blending is a real big thing, because we, in one class we'll have 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 12-year-olds all together doing the lessons, because one feels opened up to, they try to learn from the people that who have perhaps experienced much more. Then also, there are people who will learn from someone who is younger than them, because they might have something, I don't know, curious to say, or the questions comes along, and this shared experience really shapes a person in a lot of positive ways. It's not always adult versus young. It's about blending and finding solutions together, because every generation has got their own way of learning and thinking. The generation I was brought up in, it was full of technology. I've always had phones since a very young age. So if I didn't have people around me who are older than me constantly trying to change my habits of staying on phone and thinking a little bit differently, I wouldn't have this, I would say, this mentality of trying to have a balanced life. I would be, as you said, addicted, and then I would regret over time, because it kills, it drains us. I'm not going to be happy if I'm constantly in technology. What it does is that, as you said, we keep consuming things. That means it keeps suggesting us, it keeps advising us, and then shaping our life. We feel very detached from ourselves, which over time gives us this notion that we are perhaps useless, or we are perhaps not capable of, or we don't have enough potential to acquire the things that we're wanting to, because the phone, the device, the algorithm it sets, it's constantly feeding us with things which perhaps could be toxic, could be great. I don't know. I'm just saying there are also good contents, but constant stimulation of those good contents and dopamine release will hold us back to actually go there and do things, because I'm already happy about myself sitting there and watching things and feeling good. So the connection with nature, the connection with our surroundings is very important, and that starts from childhood. That starts from the habit within the family. That starts from children spend most of their lifetime as youths or as kids in their schools. So it's the duty of the school to bring them in and then involve them with actual real life activities to grow and develop. And that's something that stays with them for a much longer time. And then over time, when they're grown ups, they try to do the same things to the people around them. And this ecosystem needs to be created. It's broken anywhere you go. You see all these frustrated and stressed out people in the work field. You see parents always stressed out. You see schools not operating well. You see universities not having any more curious students doing a lot of good researches, all because of the ecosystem which has been broken. And we are at fault for this, and we need to work together to make rebuild this ecosystem, so that we have not a dystopia, but we have a better world than we have now.
Well, Nayeef, I think that's an amazing way to finish this podcast, because I think you mentioned one of the key features that take us basically away from the love for learning, and this is the detachment from nature, right? The moment that we realize that we are part of nature and we need to get back again without leaving out technology. I'm not talking about that, but that we are a piece of nature. And if we look at it from that angle, then we realize that we need to spend much more time in nature. And just this morning, we went for a walk at 6. It was 6:15. It was dark. And in the area, I'm now in Italy at the SPL home, as I said before. There are lots of, wild animals around. And we were suddenly in the dark. There was a wild animal coming out, and I was shocked and in panic in the first moment. And I realized, wow, the animal was also in shock, and we were in shock, and we went then back. But this is nice to experience, because it's part of who we are, and it's not, there are the animals and there are the trees and there are us. It's all of us. And when we are able to just acknowledge this and getting back again, these are the experiences that make you realize, oh, I'm not disconnected, I'm connected. And when we are connected, then we feel complete. And we know that there's so much to explore out there. Yes, so thank you, Nayeef, for a nice conversation.
Yeah, well, let the wild darkness bring light to our lives. Thank you very much for staying till the end, and we'll be back with another video next week.
At School Beyond Limitations, we support our students find their unique essence. Feel free to share the content of this podcast with other parents. We are here to show that your children can, indeed, bring their unique essence into life. So, reach out to us if you think that this is what you'd like your daughter, your son to experience, or apply through our website. Also, leave your comments, your questions, or your review about the podcast. Share it with others. And, as you know, sharing is caring.